with the toxicity of competitive sports, whether it's boxing, whether it's MMA, the amount of nonsense that's out there that people partake in with cutting weight, it's quite toxic, quite dangerous.
I'll try to do the Epsom salt bath to cut. I couldn't stand afterwards. That was terrible.
If you are dehydrated by as little as 3%, you can affect your reaction time and your strength and your power by 20%.
One of the times that I cut weight, it was always like a surprise. Sometimes I recovered super well and I was feeling great the next day. I had a time that I tore my hamstring next day due to dehydration.
During the fight?
During the fight.
Jiu-Jitsu changed my life. It's not about the competition, but it's the journey. It's about you changing your life, the way you think, the way you act, the way you respect other people.
You'll notice the resilience from Jiu-Jitsu and the patience and the discipline and the commitment. It carries over into every aspect of your life. Welcome to the Diet Doctor podcast, where we discuss the science of nutrition and high performance, offering practical tools for everyday life. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Diet Doctor podcast. This one is a unique episode, a very special episode, an episode that is very dear to my heart. I have been a Jiu-Jitsu practitioner for the last almost 2 decades now, formally. And I have two very, very special guests, a couple of lifelong practitioners of Jiu-Jitsu. I have with me Mr. Tiago Braga, who's a 4th degree black belt, and Tamura, who's a 3rd degree black belt. And we're going to discuss everything with regards to how do we compete in Jiu-Jitsu healthy? How do we maintain a good rate of retention instead of attrition? Food with Jiu-Jitsu, supplementary types of exercises and all the rest of it. But before we start, I've got to ask the boys, I'll start with Tiago. Where did it start? And tell us about your journey and how you ended up here with your own very successful club, Legacy Jiu-Jitsu.
Thank you, Moodi. Well, first, thanks for having us here, having me here. The beginning of my journey started as a kid. I always did martial arts. So my mom took me to judo lessons when I was 3 years old or something, 4 year old. And I did that as a kid. Then later I did karate for quite a few years as a young kid still. And what got me into actual jiu-jitsu was I always had that idea growing up. We probably from the same generation had, the Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris movies, and we used to think that. And sometimes we will get on a bit of a scrap up in the backyard of the school.
Everywhere.
And that wouldn't work as well as work on the movies, So when I was about 15, I got introduced to Jiu-Jitsu. And that's when I got hooked straight away because I felt that everything I did there actually worked. I could actually make it work. So from there on, when I was 15 until now, I never stopped.
That's awesome. So it was never just straight Jiu-Jitsu. For myself, it was at the age of 3 years old. It was Taekwondo up until about a 3rd degree black belt, then boxed for several years, just not formally. Just training, and then again after finding Jiu-Jitsu, okay, this actually works in real life as a science, as a fight science. How about yourself, bro?
Yeah. Thank you for inviting us and give the opportunity to be here as well. Well, with me the story is slightly different, I started with a friend pulling me in and let's try. I was hanging out with this friend and the friend was like, let's try. I'm like, nah, forget about this. The usual, everyone I don't want to hug boys,
Yeah.
And then I was 18 years old at the time. The moment I started, I never stopped it. That's it, yeah.
That's awesome. So was it in Brazil though, or was it?
No, that was in Japan.
Wow.
Yeah, that was in Japan, actually.
What year did you start?
2005.
2005. Did you start in Brazil?
In Brazil in 98.
Before we, so pretty close ties, they're just a little bit younger than us. But before we start, I don't want to forget the story that you just mentioned about the scarification, not voluntary scarification.
Yeah.
Of hey, you're a bad boy, literally. Do you want to share that story with us?
Well, as we're probably going to discuss a bit further here as well, with jiu-jitsu, especially with competitive jiu-jitsu, we have weight divisions. So all competitors, want to have the most advantage they can by being as heavy, as strong at the top of the division.
On the day.
On the day.
Yeah.
So what happens is that a lot of the time, what we have to do, and you are, an expert in it, we have to, going up, you're not going to get as strong as you need if you just decide to eat a lot and go up. You're gonna be heavy and slow and not make it. So we go down. You cut to the division below, sometimes 2 divisions below. And this is the process of us trying to, beat the system and be as heavy as we can, as strong as we can, by cutting weight and going to division below us. So getting to the story, we were competing in 2014, I believe.
14 or 13.
Ago, we were competing, or 13 or 14, we were competing in the trials for the Abu Dhabi World Championship.
Yeah.
And we were cutting like a tremendous amount of weight. I was cutting about 7-8 kilos to make the division. And Kai was cutting a fair bit as well.
Yeah.
And we were cutting as best as we could on the month leading up to the competition. But the last 2-3 kilos, we were cutting on the day of the weigh-in. So I remember on that morning we were going, in total about 3 hours, but we did maybe 30-40 minutes of sauna, and then we started doing rounds. We've learned somewhere we were doing 5 minutes in, 2 minutes out, 5 minutes in, 2 minutes out.
You just copy other people what they do.
We copy.
Yeah.
We try to find at the time what protocols people were doing and what works, and we just implement ourselves, without a professional guiding us. And after hours of doing that, I was already dehydrated, dizzy, my brain was foggy, and Kai was the same. And one of the times that Kai would return into the sauna, the bench was full, and he walked in, just stumbling in, and he sat on the hot coals.
Oh, wow.
I only had an energy enough, not even to speak, just to push him off. And he then ran and jumped in the pool to, try to cool down.
Your brain didn't register that it
But
was
story is now that he has the 2 bad boy eyes just below his butt cheeks tattooed permanently.
Tattooed permanently.
So I'm glad that bad boy, the shorts are not back. Otherwise, I'll have a permanent one.
That's too funny. That's too funny. So, but scarification is something that people do sometimes voluntarily as a form of tattooing, where they brand them, and it's still there. You got to hit them up.
You're not gonna make me show here. And
But last time you checked,
it's like all the jiu-jitsu community and the dietitian community will know about nutrition.
So was your fight name Bad Boy or?
No.
But it's what's interesting is that and it's still a very toxic trend where fighters cut a tremendous amount of weight, thinking that they want to be the big guy in the lighter division rather than being the small guy in the big division. It's like when when you're in grade 6 in primary school, you're the big fish, and then when you get to grade 7, you're the little fish. So it's that same ideology, that same mentality that we try and chase and pursue in competitive sports. It's very toxic in boxing. I've witnessed people hallucinating during weight cuts. I've witnessed fights not even come to fruition because of having to be stopped. It's good now that they have teams, like the UFC has actual entire departments that are dedicated to making sure that the athletes are healthy, and if they're dehydrated, there's not enough oxygen in their blood, they're not allowed to compete.
Have you heard about like the One Championship? They have the dehydration team. If you dehydrated a certain amount, you're not allowed to compete, to fight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
it's very, very important. It's very important because cutting weight, a lot of people feel like, okay, I've lost 5 kilos or I've gained the 5 kilos after the 24-hour window. And in jiu-jitsu, often it's a luxury if you get 24 hours to carb load or to hydrate. Most comps, you don't. Unless it's like a world-class competition. You can weigh in the day before. Yeah.
Not even all of them.
Not all of them.
Yeah.
Which is rough.
But it happened to me, Moodi, when one of the times that I cut weight was, it was always like a surprise. Sometimes I recovered super well and I was feeling great the next day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I was feeling, tired, headaches. I had a time that I tore my hamstring next day due to dehydration.
During the fight?
During the fight, during my first match on the day.
You continued, yeah?
No. That one I was out, carried out.
Oh, wow.
I tore. For you to have an idea when it happened, I could hear the noise.
Yeah, I've torn the hamstring. It sounds like a piece of paper tearing.
Well, I stopped. My opponent stopped, and the referee asked, what happened? There was no submission. And my opponent told the referee, said he ripped his pants, I think. Because he heard.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
He heard. He thought I ripped my pants.
Tear,
and I said, that wasn't my pants, it was my leg. But what I've seen in events, and you could even clarify for us, I think, wouldn't help to have weigh-in, because some events, they have weigh-in, you can cut as much as you want and weigh in, but you have a second weigh-in on the day of the event.
That's correct. The good federations
Yeah.
they have the second weigh-in. It's very important
Just to
because
keep, like,
just to keep it fair.
safety.
Because I've seen discrepancies in boxing matches. Costa Zoo is one of them. There's discrepancies that go up to not 14 pounds, 14 kilos.
Yeah.
A tremendous amount of weight. Now, A, that's not fair. And B, you're fighting at a shadow of your former self. That's where the term gym fighter comes from, especially in boxing. Like, he's a gym fighter. He's great in gym, great in sparring. You put him in the event, when the adrenaline kicks in and the weight cut and everything else, you don't even recognize the individual that's fighting. But a large part of it is because when you cut weight and then gain the 5 kilos, you may feel like you've adapted and you feel better. However, your organs can take up to 12 months to adapt to just 5 kilos of excess body weight, of weight gain, especially if it's a rapid weight gain. That's why yo-yoing is so dangerous. And it's the food that you're eating, even when you're weighing in, it's not digesting properly. That's why it's nice to walk around within striking distance, about 5% of what your body weight is. I've had elite level boxers. I saw one guy at a world title defense. It was a boxing match. I was helping someone cut weight to defend a world title. And I saw the opponent eating at the buffet at the hotel, and he was eating processed meat and all this food that I know his stomach on a good day would struggle digesting, let alone his stomach now after he's been starving himself for 8 weeks. His stomach's not going to digest it. So I told my client, I said, just attack his body. And he was throwing up in between rounds in the corner. And I think by round 6 or 7, they had to throw him in the
because
towel.
of food.
Yeah, that's horrible. I had an interesting chat many years ago with BJ Penn. He was in Sydney for UFC, and someone reached out to me because he was looking for a gym. That was years ago, 2010, 11.
He's one of my favorite
One of the
fighters.
first UFCs. And a guy contacted me and said, "Oh, BJ Penn needs a gym to train. We saw your gym is in this area. Could he come train?" And I was like, "Of course, bring him in." And I had a chance to be there on the mats with him and watch him doing his training, move a little bit with him and ask him questions. And one thing that I asked, because I've heard that he was one of the UFC fighters that didn't like to cut weight. He didn't cut weight.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, how? Because I saw him, he was a small guy, but no doubt of what he can do. And I asked, how do you do with no cutting weight? Like how do you perform? And he said to me, "Tiago, look, my sparring partners. He only sparred with guys that were like around 80 kilos, even though he was fighting under 70.
Yeah, that's right.
So he said, I adapt to, I know I will be fighting someone that is 80 kilos that will cut and then go back. But he said, I will be feeling my best.
That's 2 divisions above him.
Yeah, but he would prepare for that, you
Yeah.
know. And he said, maximum I do sometimes, he said, my weight cut, he said, I put my jumper and I stand in the sun for a bit.
Oh, wow. So, see, that's the thing. He's fighting at his true potential. It's not, and that's something that they really have to encourage with the toxicity of competitive sports, whether it's boxing, whether it's MMA, the amount of nonsense that's out there that people partake in with cutting weight, Epsom salt baths and all the rest of it. Man, salt puts water into your body. That's what you would do to hydrate through the largest organ of your body, which is the skin. I've seen people do that to try and cut weight when it should be the other way around. It's part of the recovery mechanism. Like having some form of electrolytes saturate through the largest organ in your body, which is your skin.
The last time that I was in the US 2 years ago competing, I tried to do the Epsom salt bath to cut. That was terrible. I couldn't stand afterwards. I stayed like for 10 minutes or something like that. I got off, I was all dizzy. I was feeling terrible.
Did you drop weight?
I was trying to just to see how my body would take. It was my first time trying, and I was like, no, I don't know, that's too dangerous. I feel I'm gonna fall.
So you wouldn't
here.
drop?
It's that you wouldn't actually drop. Like, even if you were to do a hot bath to drop, and I'm not recommending anybody do this, by the way. Don't try this at home. You can cut a tremendous amount of weight with the hot bath, but the key to doing that is not allowing the water, the steam, to get back into your skin while you're still in the bath. So as you step out, the first thing you have to do is wrap yourself up and then put yourself under layers and layers and layers to continue the perspiration, to continue water coming out of the body rather than going back in. But it's quite toxic, quite dangerous.
Yeah, it was like, for me, it was terrible. What are your thoughts as well? Because I've been struggling lately, the age, cutting weight. Before it used to be easy. I was like,
It's a lot harder.
I'll cut a little
when
bit.
I was 25.
It's never the same. You can't do the same weight cut twice.
Yeah, I used to be like this. I'll cut a little bit of carbs and sugar and salt. That's it, sweet.
And you'll be good.
Nowadays,
Doesn't work.
nothing works.
With clients, I've had people that will, just drop calories gradually over time, and the longer you take, the better you adapt. And in some cases where if you plateau, you can start implementing carb cycling, where you're eating no carbs for 2 days, and then you're eating carbs on day 3, but you're dropping the fat on the days that you're carb loading.
That's what happened.
That works quite well.
Yeah.
And then if that starts to plateau, then you can start to go a little bit more extreme with the carb depletion. I don't like it though for athletes, because our primary fuel source is carbohydrates. It's glycogen. Our brain is made out of fat, 98% fat, but the fuel source for the brain is carbohydrates. So to restrict yourself from carbs, you may still have energy because you go into ketosis, your body's using fat for fuel. Not ideal in my opinion, but your brain, your reaction time. If you are dehydrated by as little as 3%, you can affect your reaction time and your strength and your power by 20%.
Wow.
Just 3% dehydration. So you have to use a method of approach that allows for other methods to come in. I see a lot of people that start the weight cut 12 weeks out with going 0 carb. Okay, when you hit a wall and you plateau, what are you going to do next? Like week 6, let's say there's
Chop a
another
leg
3.
off.
What are you going to do? You're going to lose a limb? You can't. There's nothing left. You've used plan C without using plan A or B. You want to slowly, gradually ease your way into it, and then as you plateau, which plateaus are going to occur, and when they do occur, you've got plan B. You've got another trick up your sleeve, and then you've got plan C. To do it all at once is silly.
That's really interesting, because I have now, for example, I will be competing in Abu Dhabi early November, mid-November.
Yeah.
And I'm planning to do one competition before that, just end of October, just to prepare for the main one. And I will be competing in the 85 kilos division. So at the moment, I'm walking around 85, 86. I'm finishing my day at 85, and the heaviest I get is about 86, 86 and a half. After the weekend, maybe I can get up to 87, but 86, 85 is what I'm sitting. So the way I'm trying to approach now, because I don't want to get even close to doing those crazy weight cuts that I used to do in the past. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to keep my weight low the whole time. But in the weeks that I'm training more and I'm putting more volume, I'm in two minds now, because I feel I need to eat. I'm doing weights, and I'm doing yesterday I did 3 sessions of Jiu Jitsu, so that's 3.5 hours of training.
Wow.
And I feel I need to eat, but when I eat 2 days later, I'm looking and my weight start going up. But then if I stop eating, then I got to train less. So I don't know where the formula is for me there. Should I just let the weight go up and then come back down?
The best way to know what homeostasis or the benchmark for you is to eat as you would normally eat according to what your appetite is, eat intuitively, is if I was to put it in any way, shape or form, eat intuitively based on the output of that training, of that week, sorry. So if you're training copious amount of times for long sessions, and you're doing supplementary types of training like strength and conditioning and weightlifting and things like that, then you have to eat to fuel, because the body will have 2 forms of recovery. The body either seeks recovery through nutrition and rest and sleep, right? So if you don't compensate for one enough, the body will overcompensate with the other. For example, if you don't eat enough, the body says, oh, you're not feeding me enough to recover from these workouts. So I'm going to release the hormone that slows you down to reduce the calorie expenditure of the body, the resting metabolic rate. So I'm going to make you tired so that I avoid expending calories. And on the flip side, you'll notice on the days that you sleep poorly, your ghrelin hormone, which is a hunger hormone, goes through the roof. The days where you don't sleep properly, you start craving all the bad stuff. You start craving calorie-dense foods, fats and sugars and stuff like that. So it's not just a matter of juggling food. It's a matter of juggling rest with the training. I notice what works best for myself if I'm doing 2 sessions, weights in the morning for an hour or 2 hours sometimes, and then a sparring session in the afternoon. What works best is if there's an afternoon nap, because it prevents you from requiring excess calories. Because the afternoon nap is a means of recovery. It's not just sleep. It's not just food, sorry. It's a formula of sleep and food. I remember once when they interviewed Khabib, and they said to him, what's the greatest form of recovery that you do? We see you do contrast therapy. You do the ice baths. you do, physio, you do the stretching and all the rest of it. What do you attribute your success to in the recovery department the most? He said, I sleep every day between either 12 and 2 or 1 and 3 or 2 and 4. And that's what prevents me from falling off.
Do you think in terms of different athletes, let's say from martial arts to runners or swimmers or whatever, the body composition as well, or the individual change the type of diet, how they would have
Absolutely.
to do, and because
That's it's a very, very good point, because
let's say we are quite similar in size.
Yeah.
Tiago is very different than us.
He's quite tall. We're
How
vertically
would
challenged.
how would we adapt and adjust our diet? In terms of
the sport dictates the amount of calories that you eat. Like if you look at a big bodybuilder like Ronnie Coleman, for instance, in the off season, not when they're cutting, in the off season when he's trying to get big and he's over 330 pounds, he's on 8,500 calories, maximum pushing just under 10. When you have Michael Phelps, you remember when they had a 2-page spread in the Daily Telegraph about what Michael Phelps
I
is?
remember that page.
Man, there was a dining table and there was a mountain of food, because it takes a lot of food, good calories.
But he
was
had
on
super
10,500 calories.
But he was the because
He had to have bad food to get that in.
Yeah.
But when you look swimmers, for example, Michael Phelps never looked like a swimmer. He was like kind of ripped and
And he was ripped on 10,500 calories, man. That's how much I eat in a week.
His metabolism was crazy fast, right?
It's not that. It's the 6-7 hours in the pool of training, the calorie expenditure. That's what it is. The
But
fuel
how
needed.
come other swimmers didn't look like him, or they
He's genetically gifted. However, the calorie intake for the swimmers is very, very similar. And I've worked with some swimmers. I've worked with Liesl Jones. I've worked with James Magnuson. James in particular, prepping for competition, would have copious amounts of calories, close to 8, 9, 10,000 calories. And if you look at their frames, it's nothing like, it's the complete opposite of what a bodybuilder likes. You have to eat according to the amount of output that you're expending. If he was to eat the same way we eat, he wouldn't be able to even get through his training for the day. It wouldn't make sense. But the interesting thing is that now it's different to the past, is that everyone does supplementary exercise or something to complement what they do for competition. So for example, you said you do strength and conditioning or some weight training.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on the importance of doing something like that, especially in this day and age? Because in the past it wasn't common. Jiu-Jitsu guys just did Jiu-Jitsu. Boxing guys just did boxing and road runs. What's the importance of, do you see that, think it's significant, especially now when you're competing? Competition's so much more intense.
I think it definitely is, because I feel when I'm training Jiu-Jitsu, of course, the best preparation for Jiu-Jitsu is training more Jiu-Jitsu. But to get my body prepared to endure the Jiu-Jitsu training, avoid injuries, or even to make me strong in different angles, different sides. A lot of the time, the way I play Jiu-Jitsu, the way I position myself, the techniques that I use, favor sometimes more one side than the other, or my body composition. I never been a person, let's say, with super strong legs, or I believe I guided my jiu-jitsu and my style of jiu-jitsu a lot because of that. I play more guard. I use angles where I don't rely so much on leg strength, for example, on a big leg press. But the more I prepared and I did strength and conditioning, and I started making myself strong in these different areas that I wasn't naturally strong, I feel that it opened up the options for me now in jiu-jitsu as well. All of a sudden, if I'm wrestling, I'm better than I would naturally be, because now my hip strength, my leg strength, my mobility,
and muscle endurance too.
And muscle endurance. So a lot of the times for us in jiu-jitsu, you are in situations where you have one thing that we all have, I think, naturally in jiu-jitsu, probably better than most sports: grip strength.
Yeah.
We grip all the time.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible for you to train jiu-jitsu in the gi if your grips get tired halfway around.
Yeah.
You lose your grips, you're gone.
You're finished.
You're finished. But in terms of, for example, if you're trying to use cross-collar chokes, if you're trying to choke people, not only your grips, but now your back, your biceps, your shoulder strength, the stronger you are, the easier you can use these techniques.
To get a finish.
When you're applying takedowns, again, as I mentioned before, your leg, your squat, your leg strength, your mobility in those situations, makes a huge difference. And if you can train externally your body to be more prepared and suitable for those techniques, I think it's a game changer.
I think it's more important in Jiu-Jitsu than some of the other sports because it's a unique art where you're applying cardiovascular endurance, you're applying muscle endurance, explosive energy, so that first explosive 1 to 3 seconds, especially as you get deeper into Jiu-Jitsu and you become a black belt, you don't go 100 miles an hour all the time.
Yeah.
You explode. So you need that ATP, adenosine triphosphate type of energy, the energy you get from creatine. And you need to expose yourself to the strength and conditioning and the other elements. Where I went wrong in the beginning, when I was training elite athletes, strength and conditioning, I was training them too frequently. So there was no strength and conditioning in Australia. This is pre-F45 and pre-CrossFit phase. I'd have in one session, I'd have elite level rugby players, elite level rugby union players, elite boxers, all in one location, and I was doing strength and conditioning. I had learnt it from the States, and I was applying it in late 2000s, prior to maybe 2010. And when I was doing the sessions every second day, I noticed that I wasn't actually helping them. So there's a fine balance. I was hindering their ability. So as a strength and conditioning coach, the person who is supplementing the art, whether it's jiu-jitsu, boxing or whatever, has to check the ego aside and understand that type of training is to supplement the athlete's art. So I would, for instance, train them every second day and they weren't recovering. I had a doctor who was doing the sessions who I used to teach jiu-jitsu to. And I said, let's do some testing, see how long it takes to recover from one of these sessions. And some of these sessions are so intense that you not only create hypertrophy, which is expansion of the muscle fiber, like you get from weights, but hyperplasia, so the fibers split into two. That's how intense these sessions were. And when you're recovering, you've got to understand the immune system is compromised during the recovery phase. And the recovery was taking 84 hours, 3.5 days. So instead of helping the rugby league player and helping the boxer become a better boxer or better rugby player, I was actually making things harder for them because they're training in rugby and they're training in the ring, or for the boxer, the training for the MMA fighter, their art is more important than my strength and conditioning session. That's what's more important. But I was making them go backwards, so I cut back how much they were doing. You have to have a fine line. So I would train every 3.5 days because it was 84 hours of increased metabolic rate, increased fat burning, immune system compromised. So for 84 hours, I'd time it and then we'd do another session. So if we train Monday morning, it'd be Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, Thursday night, 3.5 days. And we'd do the next session. And that's how we would juggle it. That's how we would juggle things.
That's really interesting. And I had actually, now that you said, I had the exact experience around that time, I used to try and figure out my strength and conditioning, 2005, 6, 7. And I believe it was around 2008 when CrossFit started in Australia. And a friend told me about it. This is the ultimate form of strength and conditioning. And I looked up, I went there, I saw this guy's training. It was the first time that I saw this kind of, large scale circuit training. And I saw the people that were training and they all looked so fit and so strong. And I said, this is it. That's how I will become a great jiu-jitsu guy, I'll be stronger and fitter than everybody.
So CrossFit.
And I started CrossFit. But then what would happen is CrossFit training was preparing me for CrossFit.
That's great.
So there were days that, let's say, I was preparing for a competition and tomorrow is my hardest jiu-jitsu day, sparring day. And I will go to CrossFit and what they would have that day was something to break me. So I will finish that session. I would go home, not do anything else that day, be feverish sitting at home. And next day I couldn't move my body. I couldn't train.
Yeah, it defeats the purpose.
And I felt like that it wouldn't work. And then later, of course, when I had a proper strength and conditioning coach, I started learning that exactly what you were explaining now, that CrossFit, maybe it's a sport by itself.
Yeah,
it doesn't prepare you for, it prepares you for CrossFit,
Yeah.
And so that was a good lesson to learn.
You can take components from CrossFit, like you can take elements from it, certain exercises, and create something that's a little bit less crazy as a routine that will complement your jiu-jitsu instead of destroying your ability to turn up to training and even perform.
Saying that, that's what happened to me, destroying my knees.
Was it
I
CrossFit?
did for a little bit, and then
But
I was
Tiago got actually
feeling.
quite strong in the early
Yeah.
stage. Was really good, right?
Yeah, early stages of CrossFit when I started doing it, I was feeling amazing.
Yeah.
Later on down the track, knees couldn't hold anymore. Too much weight, too much jumpings, and like all those things.
In Jiu-Jitsu after.
And Jiu-Jitsu straight after, you know, like.
that's-
And
It can be done, but it's just got to be juggled with, using a bit of science, using a very strategic approach, an approach that's under supervision. But you would be surprised how much you have to eat and rest to be able to do both, and that's what most of us don't do. Do you have have you ever tried competing, or have you seen the effect of supplementation when it comes to jiu-jitsu, like taking your supplements, taking multivitamins, taking your BCAAs, taking glutamine and things like that? Have you noticed much of a difference with that sort of an approach?
I personally believe I've never been disciplined enough to follow it for as long as I should. I have my omega-3 tablets, my vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin zinc, vitamin C, and I tried at times to take on regular basis. But one thing that I think a lot of us, I'll speak for myself, but we fail, is when you cannot measure or see the result in days or a couple of weeks. Even the omega-3 tablets, the fish oils.
You don't appreciate them until you stop taking them.
Quite a few people told me, and I had on and off. I think my whole life I had them, but on and off. I never, followed up like as I should. But a lot of people tell me, it will take months before you actually
6 to 8 weeks roughly.
Right? Yeah, but I hear, I know creatine is another one. I always have creatine at home, and I take like religiously for 2-3 weeks, and then I forget one day, and then I forget for a month. And
then it falls off.
Falls off.
The retention rate for
I'm more
supplementation.
disciplined. I'm more
You
disciplined
take your
than
supplements,
Tiago.
yeah?
Yeah, I take like glucosamine, magnesium, and collagen. That's
Glucosamine with MSM is works wonders for joints.
Yeah, those three are like my main supplements. Like,
and you feel if you stop them, like I went overseas, I was working in Dubai for the first 3 months of this year. I said, I'm not going to take my supplements with me. I get compound, practitioner grade supplements, not the stuff that you get over the counter, and I'm going to just buy some supplements from there. Felt like crap for 3 months.
So there's that as well.
It's horrible. But the thing is,
it's not what it says on the label. You got to know how it's made or prepared.
No, because you don't understand. You start to feel so much better after 6 to 8 weeks. You have to saturate your blood with it. So you have to have enough EPA, DHA, which is the active constituent in omega-3. You have to have enough vitamin D, which is a hormone. It's called vitamin D, but it's a hormone. It plays a critical role in the way your body functions. You have to have enough of it frequently enough for a long enough time for it to saturate in your blood. And when you stop taking it, there's a profound drop-off. But the retention rate for people taking their supplements is poor. But that also brings to mind the retention rate for jiu-jitsu. Like, I was looking at one statistic at retention and attrition. And the likelihood of somebody, I don't know what it is or how we can overcome it, continuing the journey of jiu-jitsu, because they expect to get in karate, their black belt in 2 years. The retention rate for jiu-jitsu isn't very high. There's a big community that does jiu-jitsu as beginners, as blue belts, as white belts. But as you progress through the ranks, like 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 will go from white to black. I think it's 1 in 100. They'll go from white to blue. And then from blue to purple, the same. And then the same from purple to brown and brown to black. Why is that the case, especially when it's known as the gentle art suave?
In my personal opinion, and I do jiu-jitsu for 26 years, I believe now, what I find is that if you go back to the beginning of the sport, the beginning of the martial art, there were, as far as I learned, there were no belts. If you went back to samurais in Japan, you will have a kimono, a gi, and the belt that closes the gi, and that's what you wear. That's your uniform for training. And after many, many years of training, that belt, is still the same. You would have your white belt that will look very worn off and will show that you've been training for a long time, but you wouldn't be promoted. At a point in time, that changed to you will train your whole life. One day you become a master and you get a black belt.
Okay.
So you go from white belt to black belt. When we bring out Western countries,
Yeah.
I think the need for gratification, it's so great on our side of the world.
Yeah.
And increasingly more now.
Reward.
Reward, you need motivation, rather than discipline. We need more motivation to do
So
things.
does that mean there were no stripes as well before? Like
No,
on the belt?
not at all.
Oh, wow.
I never had a stripe until my black belt now. I never had a stripe in any of my belts.
I've gone belt to belt, certain belts without
Yeah.
stripes as well.
But what I found was Helio Gracie created the belt system that we have in Jiu Jitsu. I'm not sure if the kids one he created, but he created the white, blue, purple, brown, and black.
Yeah.
And I believe the intention was to give a rate of development in one's jiu-jitsu, so you would know, okay, I've progressed. I'm in blue belt now. I'm in purple belt, until you get to black belt. But in other martial arts, you have more belts.
Correct.
And then we have the stripes.
Yeah.
So I believe the main reason
For
is
retention.
for retention. It's to create more retention. You got if you go back, if you look now in jiu-jitsu on our kids belts, we have 16 belts in the kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
And these 16 belts, they have 4 stripes in each.
Wow.
And in some situations now with the International Federation,
64
64
gradings.
allow you to have, or they suggest that you can have 4 different color stripes in each belt. So the idea is you can, with a kid in a jiu-jitsu school, you can grade them once every 3 months, once a month, or you can even grade them once a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just to
Purely
keep,
for
like-
retention, because
Yeah.
kids even more need motivation. And this is jiu-jitsu also. It's jiu-jitsu schools competing with other sports. If you go to soccer, at the end of your game, you get a sticker.
Yeah, yeah.
If you go to swimming, I don't know, you get a little brochure at the end
Yeah.
of the week. So it goes back to that instant gratification.
It's sad.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
like it, but I don't. I don't think it should be something that is dwelled on. Like, I don't agree with the give everyone a participation trophy mentality just for turning up.
Kai
You know
is a
what I
lot
mean?
harder than me on
Yeah.
ratings. He actually holds people
Yeah.
back a lot more than me nowadays.
Yeah.
Because you want them to prove themselves and earn their stripes.
In competition, we have this. We work actually organizing events. We run competitions in Australia,
Yeah.
and I often have as feedback, parents asking, you should have medals for all the kids. That participate. You should have participation medals. You should have
Really?
Well, a lot of people
I don't
want.
want my son to get a trophy for doing nothing.
And we had examples with kids in our school. Even one
Actually,
of
not teaching the kids right. You need to
Well,
learn how to
I
lose,
think everyone's
how
too
to win.
fragile.
In my view,
Yeah.
later in life, you will go apply for a job and you don't get the job. What you will do? You complain to your mom. Oh,
Or
they
sit in the
should've
corner
hired
and then
me,"
never try again.
Exactly.
There's no
Exactly,
such
yeah.
thing as overnight
And
success.
we had
you know?
one of our students, one example of one of our kids for years, and he was really good. He is really good
Yeah.
to this day, and he was never getting a medal. And his division was super difficult.
Yeah.
He was fighting the best kids in the
Yeah.
country, and he will get to second place. He'll have like the toughest matches of the day.
But not all divisions are the same. Some
Not all
divisions
and
are
he-
tough.
and we had other students that went there, barely trained, had a competition against another kid that was a beginner.
Yeah.
They won, gold medal, champion.
But it's
Amazing.
not a deep pool of competition.
But I remember this kid specifically, he would be competing, and we used to just wait for the day he will. We said to him, so look, it's hard work. It might take a long time for you to get the gold medal, but if you get it one day, when you get it, you will feel
You
good.
deserve
Yeah.
it,
And when he got his gold medal, I remember that the feeling of it, it was different. I think that experience he had from being so close and not making for so long and then making it, I think that will have changed something in his brain. I think the way he will achieve things on the rest of his life, I think would be very hard to stop him from now on.
Yeah, so he'll probably go full steam ahead pursue the journey of jiu-jitsu until he's an old man.
Definitely.
Everything else in his life, the way he's looking after his family, the way he's doing, progressing in his work, the way he's getting promotions in the company he's working for, I believe he will have that mentality very hard to stop. We were actually discussing in the gym, and last night I was at Kaio's gym and we were training. He had one of his students that used to be ex-military.
yeah.
Wow.
And we were discussing that why these guys are just so tough. Oh, because they've been trained to be like that.
Correct.
You know, it doesn't matter how he looks or where he's from.
Resilient.
He is resilient. I know that he's a white belt, and I know he would. We had several rounds. We were putting him through Shark Tank, getting him the hardest training because he's going to compete on the weekend. And when all of that finished, I had a round with him, you know, and everyone had more rounds, and he had more rounds than everybody there because he's preparing to compete.
He was a guy that will never say no. Whatever you say to him, he will just like shake it off.
At the
Let's
end of
go.
training,
It's hard to come by.
No, at the end of training, I was ready to maybe not have more rounds. It was my third session yesterday. I'm okay.
That's enough.
And I look around because Kyle said one more round. I look around and I could see the eye contact with me already, like waiting.
He's waiting for you.
Because you know, like
he's looking at the buzzer.
Yeah, and he's a white belt. I'm a black belt. Clearly, I'm much more skilled than him. So he's probably looking for, you know, like either me, Kai, or Shanj there could be his hardest round. So he's looking
for
the hardest round to finish his day, you know. And I feel that
you become a trophy.
That mentality.
Yeah, the mentality.
It's what, you know.
Nowadays, I think it's very
rare.
People want things so much faster.
Yeah.
Internet, your phone, you have access to things quicker. You know, like
it's instant gratification.
It's changing the mentality of all people, I think.
And jiu-jitsu is something that's it's a lifelong journey. It's a commitment. It's not something that you're going to do for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and then learn how to apply it in a real life context. You've just opened up another branch of legacy, right or me.
Yeah.
Are you? How is that going? How's that going for you? And are you trying to instill that sort of ideology with the students that you're coming across now as a gym owner?
The idea will be the same, you know, building up the community, make sure that people change their life, like Jiu-Jitsu changed my life. And of course, like, the mentality will be the same, like just building up something that is going to be special for everyone. Doesn't matter, like, you know, it's not about the competition, but it's the journey. It's about you changing your life, the way you think, the way you act, the way you, like, respect other people. Yeah. It's more about that.
I noticed that massively.
Yeah.
It calmed me down tremendously. I had a severe anger issue growing up. That's how I got my name. A lot of people think my name is short for Muhammad, but it's not. It's actually Moodi, because the temperament was quite terrible growing up, and it humbles you, because you go to a jiu-jitsu session and there's someone half your size that, you know, can put you to sleep. And the other thing is, once you start to progress, you realize, okay, I've got skills. I don't need to prove anything.
Exactly.
I save it for the gym. There's no need to. But you see that transition as well with the students that you have.
Yeah, of course. Like, you know, and then I'll try to help them out as well. Like, it's good there because building up a team from zero, so I can see a lot of like new people that never done that. So you kind of like start molding that. I think Tiago had so much experience with this, like seeing people building up into like not only the jiu-jitsu but the career, the life, and become what they become today. That would be such a thing that I'm going to be looking forward.
Yeah, it's like you'll notice the resilience from jiu-jitsu and the patience and the discipline and the commitment. It carries over into every aspect of your life. It changes how you behave as a father, as a mother, as a parent, as a colleague. Your approach is completely different. Tiago has how many branches do you have now?
We legacy in total now, we just reached 10 branches.
Wow.
10 locations. You know.
That's awesome.
And an interesting thing on that part that you guys were saying just now, we had an experience, you know, I had several of these experiences because when I was just myself running my gym, my one gym, every time someone came to visit, or a different black belt from another team, or someone visiting from out of town, I've learned from my instructor, you know, that I would always, you know, have a round and roll and train with that person, you know, like no matter the outcome, no matter.
Hospitality.
Same as if someone comes to my house, I'll go open the door. If someone comes to my gym, I will train with them.
Yeah.
You know, I won't just let them, I'll go train with those guys over there. And, you know, it was not always an easy task.
That was not always the case, though, because in 2004, when I went to Sao Paulo, to Brazil for training, ended up competing there. In 2004, I was even told that certain streets you shouldn't go down if you're from a different team and you go into that team. It's like
That's true.
No. It's true. That's true.
I thought they were taking the piss. It's actually
no,
real.
that's true. But we had a situation one day at Legacy here in Chippendale. I think I was injured rib, or I was sick, or you were, I was sick and you were injured. Yeah.
Something
I
like
was,
It's always one or the other.
I was
Yeah, it
sick.
doesn't matter.
I was sick,
Yeah.
so I wasn't training. I was teaching a class and I wasn't training. And Kyle was not even on the mats because he had an injured rib. He
Yeah.
was, twisted his rib, so he couldn't
Yeah.
train, couldn't move. And I was there, and another black belt, now head coach of an academy, Keller from Grappling Education.
Yeah.
Like at the time, a young, great competitor, like great guy.
Yeah.
I think we spoke a few times where he said, one day I want to come visit, and classes happen, showing, and he shows up to train. And I'm thinking, wow, in my head, out of all days, I'm here, that sick,
Yeah.
But he came in and, he was a great guy, a gentleman in training, but he said, professor, come in, can I visit, train? I said, of course, man, get changed, jump in. As he was getting changed, I started stretching, warming up. So I'm training now, I am training. And of course, I will train with him, And he got on the mats, we chatted, we started warming up and training. And I'm thinking, I had only students, mostly beginners and stuff. So I said, well, I will probably, to give him a good training session, I'll try to train as much as I can with him,
Yeah.
So he doesn't come all the way here to train with my beginner students. We start training. As I am getting ready to train, I see Kai on the side of the mats, gi on, ready to jump in.
Yeah.
And I was like, man,
Tag
come
team.
in, but what are you doing? He's like, nah, man, it's have a black belt visiting here. I'm not gonna let you
Yeah.
by yourself in. Let's go.
Yeah.
And man, we just jump in and train the whole session.
It's a gang team mentality.
Nah,
Yeah.
it's
No,
just,
not
but that's
gang,
but that's from a polite perspective.
From a
hospitality perspective.
yeah. Like the
But
guy
it's
came
some-
all the way to visit us.
Yeah,
and
you have
then-
to. Yeah.
It wasn't from a challenging point of view.
Yeah.
It was more from
Yeah, exactly. But that's the beauty of the change. Like jiu-jitsu once upon a time was a very cult-like sport,
Yeah.
and if you were from another team and you went to another gym, you would not be allowed to go back to your original gym because you insulted your team, you disrespected your team for going.
Yeah, there
but
has
that
been a
culture
little bit
has
of that,
changed
yeah.
because of the open mat culture.
100%. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the open mat culture changed that.
But the idea, the way I will represent this was more like someone comes to my door.
Hospitality.
I will open the door, and let's say at that moment someone came in to visit, and I don't have bread and coffee.
Yeah, I was just
so
about
Kai
to
was
say.
the person that
so
went to
go-
get bread and coffee. You know
I
what
was
I mean?
about to say, it's like going to a wog's house and saying, I've already eaten, I'm full, I'm not going to have anything to eat. You have to eat.
You have to eat. Yeah.
You have to eat.
Yeah.
So
Good
it
example.
was more,
It's a
of,
hospitality thing.
making sure that we could create an environment with good training for a visitor, a
But
highly qualified
that's
visitor. that can
beautiful
train.
though.
Yeah.
Like how it's
Yeah.
changed
Yeah.
from not being able to walk down the street in Sao Paulo of another club because you might
Yeah.
get jumped.
Yeah.
And now it's different.
But in that part,
Much better.
Moodi, I lived those years.
Yeah.
I was there. I started jiu-jitsu in '98, and a lot of it, not the competition between teams, but jiu-jitsu really started putting its name on the world map with Royce Gracie in '93, '94.
Correct, yeah.
Uh,
First UFC.
First UFC.
Yeah.
From there on, jiu-jitsu was trying to firm itself as the most efficient martial art in the world.
By putting the weakest link in the family into a no weight division full contact.
That
tournament.
was what we saw on that moment on TV. But
Yeah.
outside of that, everyone else, starting in Brazil, but then the Gracies moved to America and did the same over there. Everyone else doing jiu-jitsu had to defend jiu-jitsu against other martial arts. So
Yeah, I remember
for
the
example-
one in the ad they put in the paper. Do you remember that? If you come and beat us, we'll pay you 10 grand. And that's a lot of
Yeah.
money back then. It's like
and the
100 grand
Gracies
now.
did that on the streets in Rio in Brazil.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in my early days, white belt, getting my blue belt,
Yeah.
there used to be people in the gym that were brown belts. Very good, very skilled, very technical.
Yeah.
But that the head coaches will think, well, this guy, he's very technical, very good. But if put on the spot against a boxer or a Muay Thai fighter, maybe he wouldn't
He
defend
can't
jiu-jitsu
apply, yeah.
as he
That's
needs
crazy,
to.
man.
So he cannot be a black belt.
That's crazy.
So a lot of people have to fight and go through situations that don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
For us now, people like me, to
Yeah.
be able to live off jiu-jitsu, call it a sport, wear a cool gi, cool rush guard,
It's so
play
different.
with my uniform.
Yeah.
So I appreciate how it is now.
Yeah.
I'm not favoring old school, new school, but I feel there is a certain respect that has to be given to the
To the
people
old
that
school.
had to do what.
Yeah, yeah.
If we are able now to open a gym, a beautiful facility,
That's
and have
because of
people
them.
pouring into jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
it's because someone had to work hard for that one
Correct.
day.
Yeah, someone laid the
Yeah.
foundation. I remember that I was training at Hein Gracie's gym in Sao Paulo just after he passed away, and I met one of his black belts that was demoted to brown for mucking around and joking in the class. He was demoted. I said to
That's the first
I
ever.
said to the boys, I said, has that ever happened? He said, well, we only know it's happened here.
Yeah,
And
well,
it was serious business, man.
yeah.
I've never heard of anyone being demoted. But thank you very much for your time, boys. You got to check out the gym in Chippendale. If you're close to Chippendale in the city, check out Tiago's gym, Legacy HQ. If you're near Rydalme, check out Kaya's gym, Legacy
Parramatta.
Yeah. Fantastic facility. It's a beautiful facility, by the way. I've done some training here with Ricardo. We were hoping
Awesome.
Ricardo and Warwick Oliveira could join us maybe next time. But thank you very much, guys. This is a little bit, it's a very important part of my life, Jiu Jitsu. So I really wanted to share that with you, and I hope that you are motivated to take on that first step, that journey towards starting something that could potentially change your life. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Of course.
Thank you.
Of course, thanks, Moodi.